Today we're going to continue talking about the letter A, the words that start with A, in the Dictionary of the Smoky Mountain English. So I'll link to the video, the first video that we did about the A's if you've not seen it, words that start with the letter A if you've not seen that one. But today we're going to pick up where we left off in that video. So the first one is Irish. So Irish is a word that I'm familiar with, that I grew up hearing my whole life. You'll hear people say it's talking about the weather. So let's hear it. It's cool, fresh, kind of in the fall or the spring, when things in the fall, when you first feel that fresh, cool air that's coming, you know, after the heat of the summer. And in the spring, sometimes you have that little taste of summertime weather, and then all of a sudden it gets airish again, usually in March and in late April, Easter weekend. Usually you'll have a little bit of weather that's airish, that's a little cool. After you thought, you know, you got used to those warm days, then all of a sudden it's airish again. So the dictionary says airish is an adjective of the weather, cool, fresh, breezy. 1959, Will's Hillbilly Dictionary, drafty, breezy, cool. Shut the door, it feels sort of airish in here. 1972, Peterson, a little chilly, pleasantly cool, and that was in Cott County, Tennessee, where that was documented, and Sevier County, Tennessee. 1974, Fink, bits of mountain speech, windy, cool. It's plumb airish out. 1996-97, the Montgomery collection, the night feels a bit airish. That was from Brown. It was an awful airish day, wasn't it? And that was from Cardwell. So that one's still really common in my area of Appalachia. I'll be interested to see if it's common where you live. The next one is Akin. So if you're Akin, you might guess that means you're related to someone. Excuse me, related by blood. See 1956 citation, so that's telling us to look at a different place down here. Let's see, where is the 1956? Mount Sterling, North Carolina. One of Granddaddy Joe's descent over in Jackson County said, well, we're no akin to you. So they didn't want to be akin. That's an interesting one. 1937 Hall collection, Copeland Creek, Tennessee. I told the German doctor that we was akin. That was Margaret Parton. Then all the way to 1982, in the book So High, when he took you, he told all who was akin to you to never set foot on his place, or never be a trying to take you from him, she continued. That sounds pretty serious, huh? Anyway, so that's akin. I still hear that one some too. The next one's really an interesting one to me that I like. So it's just alcohol. I say alcohol, but there's a variant form that you'll hear people say. So alcohol. Granny and Pat both said alcohol. Granny still says alcohol. So 1942, Hall phonetics. A few words are generally sounded with the I. Alcohol, dynamite, miracle, sassafras, spectacles, sycamore. In some of the words, I may be pinched or raised to or toward I. For example, alcohol. So 1959 Hall collection, Waynesville, North Carolina. When liquor first come off out of the still, it was alcohol. And then it'd break, and then you would run your backins as long as they was sweet until they got sour. So that's alcohol. But even like rubbing alcohol is what Granny and Pat mostly were talking about. So they would talk about, you know, if somebody got cut or you want to sterilize something, get the alcohol. They both said that. So it would be interesting to see if you've heard someone use that variant form of alcohol. To alight, if you light, that's one that's I've rarely, if ever, heard, other than maybe in a joking manner, but it's fallen out of fashion, because usually when you alight, it was that you stepped down from a horse. Of course, people are not using horses these days as often, but it could also be that you stepped out of a vehicle, you alight. So it's 1923 and 1952, Math's Tall Tales, Won't You Lie and Rest Your Nag for a While. 1976, Wheels, 2 minus, an old-timey mountain greeting to a visitor is, light and come in. It dates from the time when many travelers rode horseback, and fully spoken the greeting would be, alight and come in. It is, however, also spoken to visitors who have arrived by walking. This is an interesting one just because of today, of course, when we hear Twitter, what does everybody think about, you know, the Twitter, the social media platform, but this is all a Twitter. So it's like a phrase, all a Twitter. It's an adverb phrase for excited, all worked up. So 1956, Sundial, North Carolina, all of a twitter equals excited, tremulous. 1997, Montgomery collection, all a twitter. That was known by Jones, Norris, and Oliver. All in a twitter describes one busily engaged almost to the point of being a nervous wreck, but not accomplishing anything. As I told her to settle down, she was all in a twitter. Cardwell. All of a twitter was Brown, Ellis, Jones, and Letford all knew that. She can't get anything done because she's all of a twitter. So that one's interesting. All day singing. I grew up with all day singing, so you'll hear people talk about those still today. They have all day singings. Also, those are sometimes you hear interchangeably, all day singings or dinner on the grounds or homecoming. So all day singing was a noun. In former days, a day-long gathering to sing hymns with a break for dinner on the grounds, usually in connection with homecoming. Often only old harp was used, and all singing was done a cappella with shape notes. So if you don't know about shape note music, it's beautiful. My family did not really grow up doing that, so I don't have a lot of stories to tell about it. The girls and I have went to 2 shape note schools, Smathers Singing School in Haywood County, that we really enjoyed. And years ago, when they were really young, we went one year. I took them we stayed 2 weeks at the, let's see, what was the name of it? Southern Gospel. That's not it. That's not right. Maybe I can remember it and I'll put it on the screen there. But it was a gospel music school, and it was in the summer, and we stayed for 2 weeks. And they did a little bit of shape note singing. It wasn't all that. It was other stuff. But it's really beautiful music. If you do a search, you'll find it. But so 1975, Lunsford, it used to be. I've been to quite a number of singings and meetings of that kind where they sing those sacred songs and have those old-timey all-day singings. 1982, D. Armand, So High. There we met other families for church services, box suppers, pie suppers, all-day singing, and dinner on the ground. 1995, Williams, Smoky Mountains Folklife. Singing schools that used the shape note books persisted into the 20th century in many rural areas of the South, including the Great Smoky Mountains region. A singing master would make a circuit through rural communities during the summer. The singing schools in this region typically lasted 2 weeks, and frequently the singing master circuit would culminate in an all-day singing in the early fall. So that's interesting. I like this one a lot, all fired. So that's a saying that I hear all the time. It's an adjective phrase. It just means complete or thorough. So here's some examples. 1867, all the way that back. See, I love that. 1867, it was documented, and it's still being said today, in Brasstown at least. Probably, you can tell me if it's said where you're at too. But Harris Sut Lovingood, I will tell you one thing, George. Let's see, no, I don't want to read that one. Let's see, there's a better one. 1913, Capehart, our Southern Highlanders. Guess I run her half a mile through all fired thickets. So it was completely a thicket, in other words. 1981, Whitener, Folkways, an obliging native son seated at the end of the counter spoke up. Excuse me, ma'am, but since you're in such an all-fired hurry, I'd be right proud to trade with you. This is one of the ways that I've heard it used a lot. 1972, Graham County. It made me so all-fired mad that I concluded I would just kick that cat up the chimney, which I wouldn't kick a cat up the chimney, but the all-fired mad part, if you're all-fired mad. Or if you're all-fired in a hurry, I would say that one too, the one that was about being in a hurry. So all-fired. Maybe I should spell it out because my accent's probably messing it up anyway. So all, A-L-L, and then fired, how I say it, but I'm actually saying F-I-R-E-D, fired, all fired. All how, every way in which, that's another one. So Wilson Folk Speech, 1952, how, completely how. And so I would say this too today. I would still use this. He told all how he beat that fellow up. So I would say they told all how they make bread down there, and it was so interesting, all how. It's like we use it as a conjunction. All in, this one, I don't know if I guess I've heard this one, but not as common. So it's an adjective for fatigued or exhausted. 1976, Garber Mountainese, after walking home from work, I'm about all in. Of course, in those days, they had to walk home from work for a long piece. A fur piece, as people would say. 1986, Helton, around home. All in equals exhausted. All in a tremble, that's a phrase, adjective phrase, which means shaken severely as from fright or nervousness. So if you're all in a tremble, you could be scared, you could be nervous. I would say even you could be sick, if you were sick and you were all in a tremble. Here's a neat one, all overs. If you get the all overs, I've got the all overs before. I don't like them. Usually it's when you're nervous. I would say more than nervous, you get uncomfortable or almost scared of something. So noun, nervousness, shivers, uneasy excitement. 1917 Cape Art word list. Every time I go to studying about it, I get the all overs. 1929 Mathis Tall Tales. Get away, don't touch me. It gives me the all overs, the old lady shouted hysterically. So she didn't want nobody bothering her. Aswell Glossary, Tennessee, shivery feeling. It's the all overs is a shivery feeling. Wilson Folk Speech says it's a nervousness or an uneasiness. Paris roaming the mountains. You know, Paris is my favorite. If he's nervous, he has the all overs. 1961, he sure had the all overs that time. That was from Arms of the Mountain. 1975, Jackson, unusual words. If he has a nervous disorder, he has the all overs or he's loose all over. That woman gives me the all overs. That was from Mountain Speech. I've got the all overs. A state of nervousness or unease. So for me, all overs, I think of it more as being scared or uncomfortable. So I could tell you this story. I remember one time I loved to go to yard sales. We love yard sales. And this has been, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. But anyway, we were out I think this was before Miss Cindy, my mother-in-law, lived in Brasstown. She used to live in Black Mountain, North Carolina, and I believe it was then. Anyway, but she'd come out to see us one weekend, and we decided we'd go yard selling. So it was all of us, the girls and Matt and her and I, and we were riding around the county with no particular place to go. We were just looking for yard sales. Well, this one area of the county, we seen this yard sale. It was this big old house, and that's the kind of yard sales I always liked because I thought, it didn't always happen, but I always thought, oh, they're going to be selling grandmother's quilt or some old canning jars or something old. I like old things, you know. So we got out, and there's a lot of other people there, and they had stuff spread out all over the ground there, and people was just looking at it, and we all split up. I just wasn't even paying any attention to what they were doing. I just couldn't wait to see what treasure I was going to find, you know. So as we're walking around, I began to feel the all-overs. I began to get them. I just got uneasy. Felt, you know, all those little hairs on the back of your neck stand up at attention. And I looked up at the old house, and I fully expected that there'd be somebody in a window looking at me. You know, I just felt like somebody was watching me. I just felt really uncomfortable. And there's lots of people there, and they were, you know, it was a bright, sunshiny day. It was just the weirdest thing, but I felt that. And as I kind of turned around and began to look, I just suddenly didn't want to look at anything anymore. And I noticed the rest of my bunch was headed to the car, so I quickly went on and followed them. And I thought, well, I'm not going to say nothing about getting the all overs because I would feel silly. They'll probably make fun of me, you know, so I didn't say anything. Well, it was on this little gravel road, so by the time we got to the end of the gravel road and we pulled back out on the highway, I think it was Miss Cindy first said, well, I'm glad to be gone from there. And then Matt said, me too. And then I was like, what, you felt it too? So we had all kind of felt the all overs at that house. I don't know why, you know, I don't need to know about that, but that's how I would describe the all overs, is feeling that kind of creepy feeling that you get sometimes. You can't pinpoint exactly what it is, but you just know something's not quite right. That's what I would say the all overs are. So that one's still common here where I live, the all overs. Let's see, allow. This is a good one. So allow, that means, of course it means I will allow you to go to town or that kind of stuff, but it also means to think, to suppose or believe the way we use it. So in, let's see if we can find a good one. 1937, the Hall Collection, Bradley Fork, North Carolina. I allowed the deer might have tucked the black tongue and died. I allowed the deer might have took the black tongue and died, just like it took the cattle. So he believed that it might have. Let's see, I allowed he'd return afore this. I allowed they'd come. I allowed this corn was planted in the new of the moon. It grew so tall. That was Loretta Ramsey. 1939 Hall Collection, 9 Mile Creek, Tennessee. I looked up a tree. I allowed the bear might have had some cubs there and whooped them up a tree. Fons Cable said that. I've read a lot of stuff about Fons Cable. He was a hunter. 1945, honks done. I allowed you was done already. I allowed you was done already. That was the one I say. I already read that one. Sorry about that. I allowed they was two Dans is the reason they called him Smoker Dan. 1975, Broom out under Smokies. He lowed this was the roughest place east of Yellowstone Park. Montgomery collection, I allowed, you kind of leave off the A, Susie would fly all over a daisy field and settle on a cow pile in hunting a husband. So that's a funny one. To plan, to intend, I allowed to get me a plug of tobacco. To state, to declare, I allowed to him I never dreamt that there'd be a yarn like that. That sounds like something Granny would have said. To acknowledge or concede, he allowed as how he would kill her and Joe both if she ever slipped off and went with him again. Yikes, that was a bad one. Another one is almighty. That's an adverb, means extremely and exceedingly. 1913, Capehart, our Southern Highlanders. He crossed through the Laurel on the Devil's Courthouse and took down an almighty steep place. 1982, Powers and Hannah, Cataloochee. He had that almighty fine fiddle which set them to jigging just to hear it. And then 1994, Montgomery Collection, Cardwell just documented that yes, they were familiar with it. So I've heard almighty, but mostly I would say I would hear mighty without the all. So that's a mighty steep mountain, or that's a mighty pretty horse you got there. Is it a good rider? Instead of almighty. Most of the time, just from thinking about it, I would think that almighty might be used more in a negative term, but I don't know. I don't guess so. I guess those sound pretty familiar to me, almighty, but I would definitely say that I hear mighty more to describe something that's really powerful or strong or extremely or exceedingly, like the same definition for almighty. But as you can probably guess, I think the Appalachian language is almighty. I think it's almighty interesting. I think it's almighty colorful. I think it's almighty rich and full of wisdom and unique sayings and just a pleasant thing to hear and to dwell upon, as you can probably tell. So that's what I think about Appalachian language. I hope you enjoyed this continuation of the letter A. We'll continue in another video before long, so I hope you stick around for that. But mostly I just hope you drop back by often as I celebrate Appalachia.